All right. So can anyone tell us what book of the Bible we've been studying? Daniel. Good job. Yay. Give 2 claps for yourselves. Emig, you're about to graduate high school. You don't know how to count to 2? Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we gave a good, whatever. Last week, Tussie got a good shout out for actually knowing what they're doing. Central, oh boy, okay. All right, today we're going to be, and Caleb's here for a reason, by the way.
I'm here for a reason.
He's not just hovering.
I'm not just hovering.
That happens sometimes. I look up in my office and he's just there, but it's not a lot.
Yeah.
So today we're going to look at the story of King Nebuchadnezzar. Everyone say Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar.
I might call him King Nebi, just for short. Last time, does anyone remember who taught? So last week we did small groups. Who taught the week before that? My wife, Dr. Laura Ritchie. Aw, everyone say aw.
Aww.
What story did she teach us about?
The
Fiery furnace, and the 3 men in that story, their names were?
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
But on VeggieTales they were called? Rack, Shack, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq. He's the real Shaq. So tonight that was Daniel chapter 3. Tonight we're going to look at Daniel chapters 2 through 4. So that story of the fiery furnace happens right in the middle of what we're going to talk about tonight. And the reason we're doing that is because we focused a lot on the bold faith of Rack, Shack, and Benny. But tonight we're going to focus on the selfish faith of King Nebi. Let's be honest, we want to make sure, we want to identify with the bold faith, the bold warriors for God. But how many of us sin? How many of us mess up? Yeah, that's what I thought. Most of you, all your dirty, rotten sinners. Even my mom. But we need to look at the characters in the Bible who mess up and learn from their mistakes. So rather than reading 3 whole chapters, let's go ahead to the back and get ready for this part. Rather than reading 3 whole chapters of the Bible, which let's just face it, you guys might get bored. We're going to do something a little bit different. I needed a deep voice for this. So can anyone guess who I picked for my deep voice? Jude. Everyone say Jude. All right, so give us 1 second. We need to kind of set the mood. Lorraine, could you hit those lights, please? All right, sit back and enjoy the wonderful readings of Jude.
Nebuchadnezzar, from selfish faith to bold faith. In the great kingdom of Babylon, where gold and glory shine, a king dreams a dream that shakes the foundations of his soul. King Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of nations, sees a towering statue, its head of gold, its chest of silver, its legs of iron, and feet of clay. But then a stone, uncut by human hands, strikes, shattering it to dust. Troubled and desperate, the king demands answers. His wise men tremble, unable to reveal the dream, until Daniel, a servant of the Most High God, stands before the throne. With wisdom from heaven, Daniel declares the truth. The statue is the course of history, the kingdoms rising and falling, until one eternal kingdom stands above them all. The king is in awe, but the test of faith is yet to come. In the heart of Babylon, a golden image rises, tall, unyielding. A command echoes through the land, bow or burn. 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse to kneel. Their fate, the fiery furnace. The flames roar, the heat is unbearable, but as the world watches, a miracle unfolds. A 4th figure stands with them in the fire, untouched, unharmed, divine. Nebuchadnezzar is shaken. He proclaims, no God can save like this. But the king himself has yet to learn his lesson. Years pass, and pride consumes him. Standing atop his great palace, he boasts, Is this not Babylon, which I have built by my own might? In that moment, a voice from heaven thunders. The mighty king falls, not in battle, but in madness. Driven into the wild, he lives like a beast, humbled before the true King of Kings. But mercy reigns. In time, his mind is restored. His eyes lift to heaven, and with them his heart. He declares, the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men. A dream foretold, a fire endured, a king humbled. This is the story of faith under fire, of courage in the face of death, and of a kingdom that will never fall. Nebuchadnezzar, from selfish faith to bold faith.
All right. All right, let's give 3 claps for Jude. Okay. And let's give 4 claps for ChatGPT for writing that script. Thank you, ChatGPT. Okay. Let me make sure.
That was really good.
Was that? That was better than I ever imagined. How about you? That was epic.
We need to do that.
Should we start every lesson that way?
Yeah.
Okay. We have to put Jude on payroll. JC's actually paying attention. Okay. That's great. All right, so we'll go through. If you missed some of those details just because you were mesmerized by Jude's deep voice, that's okay. We'll go back over the story as we talk through the lesson tonight. If you're taking notes, get your pens, pencils ready, and your notebooks. I'm like sweating. Yes. Is the heat like too high?
I don't
Is
know.
anyone else feeling too warm?
I think Jude's voice was just really intense.
Okay. Okay. All right, if you're taking notes, point number 1 is selfish faith leads to disappointment. Selfish faith leads to disappointment. So we're talking tonight about selfish faith. We're talking about this faith that asks, how do I benefit? What can I get out of it? What's in it for me? Rather than, as we've been talking about, bold faith, which says, how do I serve God the best? Selfish faith leads to disappointment. So in chapter 2, as we just heard from that booming voice, King Nebuchadnezzar's rolling over everything at the time. The whole known world he is in charge of. But he has this dream. He has this terrifying dream of the statue crumbling. Nobody can interpret it. Brings Daniel in, and Daniel interprets his dream to mean that it's all going to crash down. So we're going to look at Daniel chapter 2, verses 39 to 40, and Caleb's helped me out with the lesson. He's going to read that.
Thanks, JC. But after your kingdom comes to an end, another kingdom inferior to yours will rise to take your place. After that kingdom has fallen, yet a third kingdom, represented by bronze, will rise to rule the world. Following that kingdom, there will be a fourth one as strong as iron. That kingdom will smash and crush all previous empires, just as iron smashes and crushes everything it strikes.
So there's going to be 4 kingdoms that come and replace one after another. We're not going to get into the weeds of what that means. One likely interpretation that we see through history is you had the kingdom of Babylon, and then came Medo-Persia, and then came Greece, and then came Rome. And the kingdom of Rome is what's rolling at the time of Jesus. That very well could be the truth of what that interpretation is. But the main point is Nebuchadnezzar, you are standing tall, but it is all going to come crumbling down. This kingdom will not last. And we're going to get back to that verse a little bit later. But I want to make it a little bit personal for us right now. Maybe you can think of things that are kind of lead to disappointment. I'll talk about, before I was ever a pastor, and I don't know what I am anymore, youth pastor. I've been leading worship since I was your age, since I was in high school. And early on, I loved Jesus. I came to Christ at like the age of 5. I loved worshiping with others. But if I'm honest, and you guys know, I still struggle with this today, but especially early on, I wanted to do the best possible job, not necessarily to glorify God, but for the sake of myself. I wanted things to go right so that I would feel good. If we had a tech meltdown, I would have a complete meltdown. If somebody came in at the wrong time, I'd be angry. One time I was drumming at camp, and it was before we caged our drummers up, cage-free drums. and our worship leader at the time didn't do it the way that we practiced, and I chucked my drumsticks at him. And what would happen to you if you did that to me?
What would happen if I
Well,
chucked your
it would bounce
drumsticks at
back,
you?
yeah, but-
Well, it would bounce back.
Yeah.
I would not have a life anymore.
No, I would not commit murder, Caleb. That's extreme.
What do you? I mean, there's
All
been
that to say,
times.
like, that would be that. Like, that was dumb. It was stupid. I had to apologize. But like, that was me. Like, I want this to go exactly perfect, and if it doesn't, I take it on myself. I'd be angry. I still have to fight against selfishness, but when I surrender that to God, that means I shouldn't be disappointed with failure. Because if we have the right perspective, we can take our failures and use them as an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to learn. So I want you guys to talk for a second. Caleb, you can kind of share what we're doing with this.
So we're going to ask, what kinds of disappointments do kids in middle school and high school experience? So just talk to the people around you.
Talk to the people around you about what kind of disappointments you guys face. I'm going to take the mic around when people answer. Do it for like 30 seconds and then we'll get your feedback. We haven't used it in a while. I was planning on using the ball and then I forgot. All right. Okay, back up here. Who has an answer to share? And you can either share your own answer or make your friend share. Go ahead. Caleb will bring you the mic.
Test grades.
Test grades, absolutely. Got Savannah back there. Yeah, but then it won't be on the recording for all of our friends on YouTube.
Disappointment in decisions that your friends are making or that you're making.
Sure. Got a couple up front.
Disappointments in friendships.
Yeah.
Sports.
Oh, yeah.
I said getting angry with friends for doing something that you don't like.
Sure.
Penn State.
What did you say? Penn State. Okay, yeah.
Steelers.
Okay, we don't need to say different sports teams. Go ahead. Go back to Alex.
A disappointment at school is the things that happen to you with your friends and all the people around you.
Yeah. Keep working your way back, Caleb.
Workplaces and jobs.
Oh, yeah. Workplaces and jobs, absolutely.
Not getting a PR.
Not getting a PR. In guitar playing? Just kidding.
When your school says that they're having Mac sticks, but they don't have them.
Oh, wow. When your school says they're having Mac sticks, but it's a lie. That's weird. Okay, last one.
When you have plans and they don't go the way you want.
When your plans
When
don't
you're
go the way
control
you want
freak.
it. I think that's a good one to land on. How many of you can relate to what Lorelai just said? When you have plans and they don't go the way you wanted. Yeah. So, and some disappointments are very, very valid. Don't hear when I say that selfish faith leads to disappointment, that I'm not saying that everything that disappoints you is selfish. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that when you put your faith in the wrong things, it's always going to let you down. Almost every team, unless you win states, is going to end with a loss. No musical production is going to go perfectly every single time. You're probably not going to get a 100 on every single test and assignment for the rest of your life. Putting your faith in anything besides God will eventually disappoint. Life will have disappointments, and our sin guarantees that, but we have to choose where those disappointments lead us. Point number 2, if my clicker works. Selfish faith leads to irrational choices. And we're kind of talking through a progression here. So it leads to disappointment, and if we don't surrender that to God, if we don't do the right things with that, that's going to lead to some irrational choices. A couple weeks ago, when Laura talked about the fiery furnace in chapter 3 of Daniel, she told, either if you hear or if you heard Jude read that in his deep voice, You heard that story of the fiery furnace. So we're not going to go through that whole story again, but I want to highlight King Nebi here a little bit more, and we're going to look at Daniel 3:15. Caleb can read that.
It says, I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made you when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?
So Nebi asked, what God will be able to rescue you from my power here in chapter 3. But if you look back at chapter 2, at the end of the story we just read, he knew the answer. Go ahead and read that one.
The king said to Daniel, truly your God is the greatest of gods, the Lord over kings, a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this secret.
So after the dream interpretation before the fiery furnace, he said, truly your God is the greatest of gods. Now he didn't say he's my God. He didn't surrender to him yet, but he knew who the true God was. Yet he looks at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and says, then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? So he knew the answer, chose to be selfish instead. And selfishness made him irrational to the point of wanting to murder the people who disagreed. I would not murder you if you threw drum stacks at me. I might be mad. But this is how irrational he got whenever he got disappointed and then had these selfish motives. He wanted to murder the people who disagreed. We have a quick illustration. Caleb, go ahead and walk us through that.
All right. Shout out strongest youth leader. Who do you think? Strongest. Ryan. Cooper. James. All right. We'll use James. Hey, James, can you come on up?
Well, it could be Matt Biddle.
It could be.
James, did you just stretch?
Everybody give 3 claps for James.
Okay. Let's move
Those
this.
are weak. 3. I'll give him 2.
My youth group used to do that 2 clap thing all the time, and it was really cool, and you guys are terrible at it.
Lame. Okay.
Go ahead and stand in that box.
Raise your hand if you're a 6th grader. All right. I'm going to need my strongest 6th graders. So I'm going to need Alex. Keep your hands raised.
Just Caleb, just 2, because I only have 2 prizes.
Okay.
Well, you could get a 3rd one. I actually have a 3rd prize.
Caden, on
What?
the back. Oh, wait.
I don't know.
What? Yeah. I'm not even going to say it. Wait, never mind.
All right, you gonna explain what we're doing?
Yep. Okay. So, James, your job is to stand there looking, I need you guys to do everything you possibly can. Wait,
No shots below the belt.
No shots below the belt. Pull them off. Hard to scam. What are you doing? Pull them off.
They're gonna try to pull James off. The winner. Hold up.
I was just gonna use you to fight them off.
Okay. So if you guys win, each of you gets $5 to Dunkin' Donuts.
Ooh.
If James wins, he gets the strongest youth leader trophy.
I'll split it with you.
Okay. So they have.
I want to try.
What's up? You play all the games. It's fine. All right. Hey, they're gonna have 30 seconds. So when I say go, actually, I'll have Caleb say go. You guys count down from 30 to 0. And if he falls off once, he can get back on. You need to get him off and you guys back on.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
3,
All right.
2, 1, go.
30, 29, 28, 27,
26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 16,
15,
14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey! I'm going to give it to the guys, Dunkin' Donut winners. I need to get a 3rd card for you. Remind me after youth, okay? And the winner of this trophy is Matt Biddle. Can you kick those out of the way, Caleb? All right. Listen, let's talk about why we did that. What was our point? Selfish faith leads to
Irrational choices.
On what planet, if there was no selfish motive, should Alex Detterline go up and try to fight James Greenewald? But Alex, why'd you do it? Why'd you do it? Why'd you fight James? Because you wanted something, right? What'd you want?
Dunkin'
Dunkin' Donuts, that's right. He didn't even know the reward. All right. He just did it for fun. No, on no planet would any of you get, now some of the girls want to fight James now, which is a weird turn I didn't expect. You can earn, I have more gift cards, stay on track. You didn't?
I didn't either. I did.
That's a lie.
I did.
I remember handing it to you at church. Stop. Okay. Please stop derailing me. What are we talking about? Irrational choices. There's nothing rational about a 6th grader going up to James and trying to tackle him to the ground. But when they have selfish motives, and Duncan's a pretty good motive, they did all those crazy things to James. Now, if they ever just came up to James and did that on the street, that'd be pretty scary for those guys, I think. Yeah. Right. So, dumb illustration, right? But do you get the point? Selfish motives lead us to irrational choices. Let's go to our next point. Selfish faith leads to destruction. And you can kind of see that progression. It leads to disappointment. When we're disappointed and we wallow in that, it leads to some irrational choices. And ultimately, if we make enough of those dumb, irrational choices, it destroys our lives. It leads to destruction. Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 4 had another dream. And Daniel interpreted it to mean that, and we saw this in the reading from Jude. You okay, Tyler? Almost lost our cameraman. Okay, back on track. He had another dream. Daniel interpreted it to mean that Nebuchadnezzar would be completely humiliated because of his own selfishness. He's seen two opportunities with the interpretation of the first dream with the fiery furnace to know who's the one true God. Yet at the beginning of that last story, he's standing atop the palace saying, look at what I've done. So God's going to let him be humiliated. He's going to drive him from society. He's literally going to make him eat grass like a cow till he was humbled. Let's look at Daniel chapter 4, 28.
But all these things did happen to King Neb. 12 months later, he was taking a walk on the flat roof of the royal palace in Babylon. As he looked out across the city, he said, look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals, and you will eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. That same hour, the judgment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow, and he was drenched with the dew of heavens. He lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird claws.
Talk about being humiliated. I mean, that's wild. I've never seen that happen in my lifetime. But if we believe Scripture's true, we believe that this happened. So back to that point, selfish faith leads to destruction. Listen, I want you guys to look up and listen here. Unless you're writing, that's fine. I've seen this happen way too many times. I've seen it happen way too many times. I can think of friends from high school. I can think of friends from my own youth group that I grew up in. I can think of friends that when I visited here at MGBC that have gone through this same progression. I've been a youth leader here at Synergy for 15 years, and if I close my eyes, I can start to see the faces of several kids that I saw sit in those exact spots in this room. Former students that would come and hear the lessons. They'd worship with me. They'd lead worship with me. They taught lessons. They sat in my house and spent time with my wife and I, talking about life, talking about Jesus. When I think of those students, first of all, it breaks my heart, but I can see how that trajectory happened. Small disappointments. I put all my hope and trust in sports, and I get hurt. It's done. Put all of my faith in my grades, and something happens and I can't go to the college that I want to. I put all my hope and faith in a relationship, and I'm tying my faith around that relationship, and as soon as it splits, the faith's gone. And these aren't people that just casually attended the youth group that I'm talking about. These are people that were sometimes core leaders sitting in the same place as you guys are. And the minor disappointments led to major ones. Major ones led to irrational, dumb decisions that just kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. People who love them tried to get them to turn back on the right path. And they might for a little bit and then turn back to the same sin. Might for a little bit and turn back. But when your focus turns to pleasing yourself, it leads to total destruction. And whenever I think about these former students, and anyone, people that have been in my path that I know have just gone to total destruction, I pray for them. And look here, I pray for you guys a lot too. I really do. I'm not perfect with this, but I should probably stop doom scrolling so much. But if I'm going to doom scroll, I sometimes try to pray for you guys as you come up on my feed, or if I go through your stories. There are a lot of people here that pray for you guys. Make sure you're praying for each other too. Make sure you lean on each other too. But don't let pride stop you from reaching out to somebody. Don't let pride stop you from reaching out to somebody. And just because you're doing all right this week doesn't mean next week's going to be the same thing. We can't let fear of judgment stop us from opening up to people who care. We surround ourselves with other believers because we want them to help us make good judgments. There's a good way to make judgments. There's a good way to judge. It's to say, hey, Cam, how am I doing? What am I doing? Is there anything you see in my life? Don't actually answer right now. Is there anything you see in my life that I could be working on, not on my own strength, but on the strength of Jesus Christ? And if Cam's my friend, he's going to answer the question. And I can't say, well, you can't judge me. If I ask the question, it's fair game. So surround yourself with people to help you make good judgments. I feel like that's a point in almost every one of my lessons. You know why? Because we don't get it right. Because it's so important. Being around the right people is so important. But listen, there is always hope, because this last point, bold faith leads to humility. Selfish faith leads us down this path of disappointment, irrational choices, destruction. But if we turn to God and boldly put our faith and trust in Him, He'll help us turn to humility. Let's go ahead and read the rest of these verses from Daniel 4.
After this time had passed, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to the heaven. My sanity returned, and I praised and worshipped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever. His rule is everlasting, and his kingdom is eternal. All the people of the earth are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases among the angels of heaven and among the people of the earth. No one can stop him or say to him, "What do you mean by doing these things?" When my sanity returned to me, so did my honor and glory and kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored as head of my kingdom, with even greater honor than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven. All his acts are just and true, and he is able to humble the proud.
So Nebuchadnezzar, he wasn't even one of God's chosen people, allowed God to take humiliation and turn it into humility. He didn't stay. He could have stayed that way. Even he could have snapped back into his right mind and been like, all right, I'm back in charge. But he allowed that to turn him to God. He allowed that to make him humble. So why should I care? Why should I care about this story? If I'm sitting in your seat, I might be asking that question. Have you ever hit a point like that before? Not that you're literally eating grass, but that just life is in so much turmoil that you don't know what to do. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you're there right now and the people sitting next to you don't have a clue. Can you relate to King Nebuchadnezzar's story tonight? And where do you run to when life gets hard? Where do you run to? Is it those things that we know will always fail? Is it to relationships that you know are not going to point you in the right direction? Or do we run to Jesus and to people that want to point us to him? If we look back at chapter 2, this prophecy that Daniel gives King Nebuchadnezzar, he says, during the reign of those kings, so these are these kings that their kingdoms come one after another, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed or conquered. It will crush all these kingdoms into nothingness and it will stand forever. What kingdom's he talking about? The eternal kingdom with Jesus Christ reigning on the throne. The eternal kingdom with the king on the throne who suffered and died because of what you did. Because of what you did. Because of what I did. But he didn't stay dead. The God of the universe came, lived as a human, suffered and died because of what we do, and he rose again. So when Daniel, hundreds of years before Jesus was even born, talks about this kingdom that will never be destroyed, never conquered, that's who he's talking about. He's talking about Jesus. So one question I want to ask is, are you part of that? Are you part of that kingdom? Have you surrendered your life to Christ? Do you have questions about that? If you do, tackle me afterwards so I can't leave the room. It's okay. If that's what you want to talk about, feel free to just tackle me so I don't go anywhere. Or James too, he wouldn't mind being tackled again. Find someone to talk to about that tonight. Don't leave here if you have questions. God opens an invitation for all of us to join that eternal kingdom, and he made a way to do that through Jesus Christ. So a couple things to think about, and let's go ahead and drop the lights down just so you guys aren't looking around. You don't need to write anything down unless God puts something in your heart to write down. But think about this for a minute. What should I do now? I need to be honest. Maybe you do want to write this down. I need to be honest with God. We need to pray when we realize we're slipping. We need to pray. We don't need to run the other direction and ignore to God. We need to pray. And whenever you're honest with God, is he shocked? No. He already knows. He knew before you even did the thing that you're ashamed about that it was going to happen, and he still offers the opportunity for you to surrender that to him and turn to him. So be honest with God. Don't pray shallow, half-hearted prayers. Be honest. Number 2, I need to be honest with myself. How many times do we slip into these patterns of sin or just reckless decisions or even just complacency? But I'm okay. I just need to do one more thing, and I can climb back up here, and then it knocks me back down. And just one more thing. I just need to do one more thing. I need to do it by myself. Knock me down. Be honest with yourself about where you are. If you're not honest with yourself, you're never going to be honest with other people. But if we can be honest with God and with ourselves, then we can be honest with people who love and care about us. With people who are going to love you unconditionally and be honest with you. Part of unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional acceptance of what you're doing. I hear that a lot. Somebody, they're making a judgment about me. Guys, we're constantly making judgments whether something's good or bad. I'm not going to be offended if Cam makes a judgment about me that, like, hey, Ryan's doing pretty well at this. Like, we're constantly making judgments. But if we surround ourselves with the right kind of people who are going to point out those things that we're falling short on, then the loving thing to do is for them to tell us where we're falling short. And do that. And if you're the person who feels the need to have that conversation, you better do that with grace and with love. You're not God. You don't know everything. You are not God, and you don't know everything, so don't pretend you do. But be the kind of friend that's willing to share hard things. Be the kind of friend that's willing to hear hard things. And if in the moment that conversation doesn't go very well, come back to it. Don't just act like it never happened. Don't just ignore each other. Come back to it. Find people that love you unconditionally and surround yourself with them. Listen, guys, girls, whoever, if you need that kind of person, I'm willing to be that kind of person for you. I would love to be that person. If you have something you need to get off your chest, I'm willing to be that kind of person for you. When I look around the room, my wife's right over there. She wants to be that kind of person for you. If I look at the rest of these youth leaders, they want to be that kind of person for you. Give you unconditional love, not acceptance of what you're doing, but unconditional love and acceptance of you as a child of God. You as a person made in his image. So if you're looking for that, it's here in this room. Don't hide from it. And listen, if you've been hurt before, maybe you've opened up before and you've been hurt. Me too. Me too. I've been there. And after that happens once or twice or 3 times or on, it's so hard to trust others. But God designed us to need other people anyway. And if you're a follower of Christ, God designed us and puts it in our hearts through the Holy Spirit to need that from other believers. You can't walk the Christian life alone. I remember when Pastor Darrell was here saying all the time, almost every week, Christian life is not meant to be walked alone. And it's so true. So I just want to give you maybe a minute or two. We have a little quiet music in the background. Don't need anyone moving yet. Actually, scratch that. Prayer team, why don't you guys quietly make your way to the back? Just start praying for us. Worship team can hang on for a minute. And I just want to take some time to think about these questions and to pray. And while we're praying, if you need someone to pray with, I know it's hard. I know it's intimidating. Stand up and find someone to pray with. Find a friend in the back. Find a youth leader. Find someone to pray with you. You can do that now. You can do that when we sing here in a minute. But just take a minute and think about these things and be honest with God. Be honest with yourself. And if you need to, be honest with somebody else. I'm going to pray for us. While I pray, the worship team can get ready to lead. The rest of us don't need to look around. We can just keep praying. But I'll pray and the worship team can come up. God, come before you humbly. I want to come before you humbly and know that I'm not perfect. I have shortcomings. There's times where I've gone down this path too. I know there's others in the room that have been down this path and you've led them back to humility. I know there's others in the room that are really struggling right now. I mean, maybe nobody even knows about it, or maybe they've only shared just a little bit. God, help us to be honest with you. Help us to turn to you. You already know what's going on. You already know what's in our hearts. Help us to be honest with you. Help us to be honest with ourselves about those things. God, we don't need to pretend. There's no fooling you. We can't fool ourselves for too long till we're found out. God, help us to be honest with others. I pray that if any of us here tonight need to talk to somebody, that we would take the opportunity to do that, whether it be with a prayer team member or a youth leader. Maybe we need to call somebody tonight when we leave. Work in our hearts, Lord. Help us to have the boldness to allow you to humble us. Because ultimately you're in control and we're not. So help us to have that bold faith that leads to humility, and because we don't need to figure it out on our own. Jesus, you paid the price for us. As we saw in this passage, Jesus, you're going to reign forever. You give us a chance to be with you for eternity. Help us not to miss that opportunity. I pray if there's anyone here that you're tugging on their hearts, that they would be bold to take that step, to ask the next question, to pray that prayer, whatever that may be. And to ultimately, I pray that people here would surrender their lives to you as you lead them to do that. We thank you for your word. We thank you for these stories that happened thousands of years ago. Thank you for the story of Daniel and King Nebuchadnezzar that happened hundreds of years before Jesus even came to earth. Help us to learn. Don't let us take it for granted. Thank you that we get to gather here and worship you. No matter what kind of mess we're in, God, we can still worship you, because our worship doesn't depend on how we are or who we are. We worship you because of who you are. So as we sing this next song, help us to remember that. It's In Jesus' name we pray, amen.